feels weird, man. This world. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jasoda Nandana Brajajana Rajana Jasoda Nandana Brajajana Rajana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya. Thank you everyone for coming. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayana Namaskritam Naro Cheva Narottamam Deva Saraswtam Vyasam Tato Jayam Udiraye Nashapresha Badreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Today we'll be reading from the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 47. Is that correct? 47. 47. I'm going to turn it off. Chapter 47, verse 59. So here we go. Verse 59. I'll turn my phone off real quick. Don't want the sound effects. No, crucified. Please forgive me for the technical difficulties. Okay. Verse. All right, here we go. Quemastriyo vana chadir vyapichara dushtaha Krishne kwachaisha paramamani ruda bhavaha Nam ishwaranu bhajato avidusho api sakshat Shreyas tanoti agadaraja ivo payuktaha Quemastriyo vana chadir vyapichara dushtaha Krishne kwa chaisha paramamani ruda bhavaha Nav ishwaro anu bhajato avadusho api sakshach Shreyas tanoti agadaraja ivo payuktaha One more time, right? Or I didn't keep count. No, it's fine. All right, word for word. Qua, where in comparison. Imaha, these. Striyaha, women. Vana, in the forest. Charihi, who wander. Vyabichar, by improper behavior. Dushtaha, contaminated. Krishna, for Krishna. Kwacha, and where. Eshaha, this. Parama Atmani, for the Supreme Soul. Ruda Bhavaha, stage of perfect love, known technically as Mahabhav. Nanu, certainly. Ishwaraha, the personality of Godhead. Anubhajataha, to one who constantly worships him. Avidushaha, not learned. Api, even though. Sakshat, directly. Shreyaha, the highest good. Tanoti, bestows. Agada, of medicines. Rajaha, the king, namely the nectar which the demigods drink for long life. Eva, as if. Upayuktaha, taken. Translation and purport by the disciples of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: How amazing it is that these simple women who wander about the forest, seemingly spoiled by improper behavior, have achieved the perfection of unalloyed love for Krishna, the Supreme Soul. Still, it is true that the Supreme Lord himself awards his blessings even to an ignorant worshiper. Just as the best medicine works even when taken by a person ignorant of its ingredients. Purport: the use of the word qua in the first two lines indicates a sharp contrast between apparently incompatible items. In this case, the apparently insignificant and even impure position of the gopis mentioned in the first line, and their attainment of the highest perfection of life, mentioned in the second. In this regard, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti describes three types of adulterous women. The first is a woman who enjoys both her husband and a lover, being faithful to neither. Both ordinary society and the scriptures condemn this conduct. The second type of adulterous woman is she who abandons her husband to enjoy only with her lover. Society and the scriptures also condemn this behavior, although such a fallen woman may be said to at least have the good quality of dedicating herself to a single man. The last kind of adulterous woman is she who abandons her husband and enjoys in the attitude of being a lover of the Supreme Lord alone. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti explains that although foolish, common people criticize this position, such behavior is commended by those who are wise in spiritual science. Therefore, learned members of society in the revealed scriptures praise such single-minded devotion to the Lord. Such was the gopis' behavior. Thus, the term vyabichar dushtaha, quote, corrupted by deviation, end quote, indicates the apparent resemblance between the gopis' behavior and that of ordinary adulterous women. Amagyan samanandasya ginanjana shalakaya kshakshumilitam yena tasmai shri guruve namaha shri chaitanya manobishtam stapitanyena bhutale swayam rupa kadamayam dadati swapadantikam vanchakapaturubhyashta kripa sindubhya evacha patitanam pavinebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaurabhata Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jai, thank you everyone for coming. Maybe Sunil Madhava Prabhu, you could let me know at 8:20. I'll take your recommendation, less is more, but I can't really see the clock sometimes because of the reflection. So you could, if you could be so kind, then we'll take some discussion. As usual, I'd like to offer my gratitude, of course, to everyone who came, those online, and especially my mother and my brother, His Grace Jaya Jagannath Prabhu. So as usual, I'll start with the quote that sets the theme of what we'll be discussing today. And this quote is by Soren how do you pronounce his name? Soren Kierkegaard. Soren Kierkegaard, so one, you could say what, philosopher? And Prabhupada in his book, Beyond Illusion and Doubt, dismantles all these philosophers' philosophy. So I believe he's also mentioned in Prabhupada's book, Beyond Illusion and Doubt. So he says, quote, people demand freedom of speech as a compensation for the freedom of thought, which they seldom use, end quote. I'll say it again, repeat that. Quote, people demand freedom of speech as a compensation for the freedom of thought, which they seldom use, end quote. So in this regard, I should be pointing out that why does Srila Prabhupada insist that we read each canto or volume of the Srimad Bhagavatam in chronological order before we read the 10th canto, or the canto that specifically deals with Krishna's loving pastimes with the gopis? The answer is this: so we can think before we speak. In other words, when the general Prabhupada often say, I'm paraphrasing, when the general public hears about the gopis in the spiritual world, they equate it to the groupies in the material world. Therefore, the last line in this purport says, thus the term vyarbichar dushtaha, corrupted by deviation, indicates the apparent resemblance between the gopis' behavior and that of ordinary adulterous women. women. In other words, the difference between the gopis and the groupies. So that's basically what's described. And so, in other words, we could get ourselves in a lot of trouble when we jump to conclusions. And so Prabhupada says, when we jump over the first 9 cantos of the Srimad Bhagavatam all the way to the 10th canto, then naturally we're going to jump to conclusions. And it's described that if we jump to conclusions in many verses, that we cannot experience the bhava or ecstasy from the holy name. Krishna na mahamantreda eta swabhava ye jape tada Krishna upajaya bhava. So when Lord Chaitanya was speaking to Prakashananda Saraswati, the Mayavadi philosopher, he told him that my spiritual master says, simply by chanting this Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, one can develop all one's bhava, or ecstasy, or happiness, or joy, or ananda, pleasure. But why is it experiencing that you could say for yourself, at least the scriptures say, generally speaking, we don't derive any pleasure from chanting the holy name, especially japa, and or reading the Bhagavatam, or maybe associating with the devotees. It may be some ecstasy at first, but how to maintain that ecstasy? Well, the reason is Siyat Krishna Nam Chari Tadi Sitapi Avidya Pito Patato Rasa Nasa Narochi Kanu. Sri Rupa Goswami says that when we're afflicted by the jaundice of avidya, ignorance, then we cannot experience any taste of the holy name, pastimes, or association with devotees. And avidya, what does ignorance mean? The ignorance means, although I don't know anything, I act like I know everything, and therefore I jump to conclusions. And so that's what's been described in today's verse. And there are many pastimes of how we could get ourselves in a lot of trouble when we jump to conclusions. The very first pastime of the Bhagavatam is an example of jumping to conclusions with Parikshit Maharaj. He was hunting in the forest on a very hot day. And he came to the ashram of a sage. What was the sage name? Shamika Rishi. And this Rishi was completely absorbed in meditation. And so he asked the Rishi, I'm the king of the world. May I have a glass of water? So the sage is, maybe I'm gonna speak loud. Excuse me, may I have a glass of water? So he became so angry when he was ignored, in much the same way we become angry when we're ignored, that in order to retaliate, he put a dead snake around the king. Why? Because he jumped to conclusions. And it's a long story. I won't go into every detail, but this, you could say, it led to something externally bad, but in the end, it was ultimately good. But the lesson is we could get ourselves in a lot of trouble when we misjudge people, when we jump to conclusions. He thought, oh, he's ignoring me on purpose, but he later realized, actually, he didn't see me. He was so absorbed. Just like when you're absorbed, just like when I was a child. My mother always reminds me and my brother of this. She bought us a Sega Genesis video game. And we would come home and go straight to the Sega Genesis without doing our homework. And so she said, this is when she realized she had to get rid of it. When she was right there next to us, and she says, do some chore or something. She said something, but we were so absorbed in a video game, we literally didn't hear her. So she's like, oh, I have to get rid of it. So we could see that sometimes people ignore us, not on purpose, but because, for many reasons. But so the lesson is we could get ourselves in a lot of trouble when we jump to conclusions. So that would be the theme of what we'll be discussing today. So there's a nice quote that says, quote, the only exercise some people get is jumping to conclusions, dodging responsibility, pulling people down, digging up dirt, stirring up trouble, throwing their weight around, and pushing their luck. And so there's many pastimes that describe this. So in one word, jumping to conclusion is known as speculation. So speculation is an inner demon. So there's a nice analogy I always share. It says, just as criminals who escape from prison will cause problems for all of human society, so when our bad qualities escape from us through our words and our actions, they cause problems for us and potentially for others. How does the government subdue criminals? With security guards. So it's described in the Bhagavatam, Yasyasti Bhaktir Bhagavatiya Kenchana Sarva Gunais Tatra Samasate Suraha, that a wise person subdues bad qualities with good qualities. We subdue pride with humility, envy with appreciation, vengeance with forgiveness, and speculation with education. And now, so we may wonder, and this is the purpose also of chanting the holy name, one purpose, not the ultimate purpose, but one purpose to why we're chanting the holy name is to subdue our bad qualities. And we see that as soon as we stop doing kirtan, as soon as we stop doing japa, then we get into these frivolous conversations, and what happens? The bad qualities come out, generally speaking. So therefore it said, kirtaniya sadahari, we should chant all the time. However, the Chaitanya Charitamrita says, Bahujama kade yadi shravanam kirtan tabutana paya krishna pade premadan. Even if you chant the Maha Mantra for millions of births, if you commit offenses, if these bad qualities continue to come out, then you will not get the goal, the love of God. It's very simple. Like, for example, how often should criminals be subdued? Some of the time, most of the time, or all of the time? All of the time, obviously. I've mentioned this many times before. It's not Christmas. We don't say, oh, it's Christmas, let the homicidal maniac out to see his family so he could kill everyone else. No. Criminals should be subdued all the time. But when we chant the Maha Mantra while at the same time committing offenses, it's like security guards who lock up criminals, right? That's what we do. When we're chanting the holy names, none of the bad qualities come out. We're just thinking about kirtan, we do japa. But then what are those offenses? That's like the security guards letting the criminals out. So you lock up the criminals when you chant the holy name, and then you let them out when you stop chanting. So this is what Bahu Jama Kade Yadi Shravanam Kirtan Tabutana Paya Krishna Pade Primadan means. We chant the holy name, we don't commit any offenses. But as soon as we stop, the offenses come out. So what's the solution? Prabhupada mentions in that purport. So this verse, Bahu Jama Kade Yadi, etc. This is from the Adi Leela chapter 8, verse 16. And Prabhupada mentions what's the solution. In his purport, he says the solution is Trinadapi Suni Chena Tador Ivasahi Shnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahadi. So Prabhupada specifically uses the word strictly. He says, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta says one should strictly follow this verse of Lord Chaitanya of being more humble than a blade of grass, more tolerant than a tree, and ready to offer all respect to others without expecting respect in return. So moving on to another analogy. So these are basically at least one of three analogies subduing our bad qualities like criminal. Another analogy is this, makes the point very vivid of how we could get ourselves in a lot of trouble from jumping to conclusions or speculating. So in every sport, regardless of what sport, me and Donovan, we grew up watching Michael Jordan in basketball, so sometimes we discuss that. So take any sport. I'm sure Sunil Madhava probably grew up watching cricket, obviously, and Subal probably grew up watching soccer, the World Cup. No? Yes? Oh, I'm aggressive. And Mother Krishna Archana grew up watching, tennis. Okay, tennis. So she watched tennis too. So her favorite player, I'm sure, was kind of like me, John McEnroe, who screams a lot. Anyways, so in any sport, there's something called boundaries. Inside of bounds and outside of bounds. Now, in every sport has something or someone called the referee, right? So sometimes we see in the sports, the referee may judge a particular player or a particular team, and his judgment is, you crossed the line, you stepped out of bounds. In much the same way this verse describes that the gopis, they appear to cross the line, appear to step out of bounds of proper behavior. But higher than the referee is something called the replay. What is the replay? The replay is when a team or a player disagrees with the referee, and they'll have something known as the challenge, meaning they could challenge the referee's judgment. And it's basically described that they'll go to the monitors. Why? Because the referees and the players, they only have one angle of vision, whereas the cameras, like the Super Soul, like the demigods, like the elevated beings, they have all angles of vision. So from one angle of vision, from the ref's point of view, it appears that the player or team crossed the line or stepped out of bounds. But sometimes from a better angle of vision, it's decided that this player or team didn't cross the line. And we see that. So it's called the optical illusion. From one position, it appears that somebody may have crossed the line. But when you look at a better angle, you realize that they didn't cross the line. So in much the same way, it appeared that the gopis crossed the line of proper behavior. But it was, of course, probably I don't need the mic usually, but it appears that the gopis crossed the line. But it's this conclusively concluded in the Bhagavatam that they were actually following proper behavior, which means atapum bir duija shrestha varnashram vibhagashaha swanotitasa dharmasa samsiddhir haritoshana. And what is proper behavior? Samsiddhir haritoshana, to please the Lord. Because if we try to please others, people have so much, just like a mother. You know, a mother may refuse to give candy to her child, and therefore the child is displeased with the mother. But does that mean the mother doesn't have her child's interests at best hand? In much the same way, when we try to please people who are childlike, when they have so many desires to be fulfilled, then it's impossible to please them. So our only concern should be samsiddhir haritoshana, how to please the Lord. And sometimes we see the gopis and other great devotees in the scriptures, their only concern was to please others, and they were less concerned about, pleasing everyone, because that's not possible. So there's a saying, it says, if you please God, it does not matter whom you displease. And if you displease him, it does not matter whom you please. And we see this in so many pastimes, like the pastime of Hiranyakashipu and Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj, he pleased the Lord, but he did not please Hiranyakashipu. Why? Because Hiranyakashipu has so many material desires, like a child. He's very childlike. So this is one lesson. And so as far as seeing from many angles of vision is concerned, or in other words, how we could get ourselves in a lot of trouble from seeing from one angle of vision, there are so many pastimes in all universal spiritual teaching. I'll take one from the Bible and many from our teachings also. So this first one, especially regarding adulterous, cheating women, which this verse specifically kind of describes or equates the gopi to when we jump to conclusions. So long story short, the very first pastime regarding Jesus in the Bible is regarding his parents. So Lord Jesus Christ's mother name was Mary, and his father name was Joseph. So long story short, so once upon a time, an angel appeared to Mary, and this angel told Mary, "My dear Mary, the Holy Spirit will impregnate you with the Messiah, the chosen Son of God who will deliver people from their sins." And so you would think when this angel told Mary this, it's like, I'm the chosen one. She should be very happy, right? But it wasn't so easy, because the angel forgot to tell Mary's husband that she'll be impregnated by the Holy Spirit. She forgot, the angel never told Joseph. So one day Mary went to Joseph. She says, "My dear Joseph, an angel appeared to me. Now I'm pregnant, and I didn't do anything wrong." "Oh, are you serious?" "No, let me get this." So Joseph said, "Let me get this straight. So an angel appeared to you, and now you're pregnant?" "Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying." So Joseph essentially said, "Okay, I'm going to go find me a beautiful angel and impregnate her too." He was actually going to leave Mary, divorce her. So an angel appeared to Joseph that same night in his dreams. And the angel told Joseph, "My dear Joseph, you're jumping to conclusions. You're seeing from one angle of vision. Actually, Mary's telling the truth. The Holy Spirit is going to impregnate Mary with the divine son, a divine son known as the Messiah, or Jesus, or Yeshua, my brother's name." Actually, another name, one of the names of Jesus is Yeshua. So actually, my brother's name, original birth name, is Yeshua. And this is an interesting point, how my brother found out that the name Yeshua is another name for Jesus. And he found out when he was 12 or something like that, 12 or 13 years old. So he was talking to one Spanish friend. And so this Spanish friend name was Jesus. And my brother said, oh, Jesus, that's the Spanish name of Jesus. And he was like, yes. And so Jesus told my brother, your name is also Jesus, Yeshua. And my mother did not know that. So she gave my brother this name, Yeshua, without knowing that it was another name for Jesus, actually. And so long story short, the Holy Spirit, this angel appeared to Joseph and says, you are seeing from one angle of vision. Do not leave Mary. So in this way, it's a lesson, another lesson, the same lesson we could take. We have this speculation is an inner demon that could cause problems between so many relationships, and it could get us in a lot of trouble. And so the lesson is that give people the benefit of a doubt. And so you may argue, okay, yes, suppose Mary wasn't telling the truth. Suppose she did cheat on her husband, Joseph. Does that give Joseph the right to slander her, criticize her? Or we see sometimes people engage in domestic abuse, right? Oh, my wife cheated on me, so therefore it gives me the right to engage in domestic abuse. No. So this inner demon, known as vengeance, if we don't subdue it with forgiveness, then it will also cause problems between our relationships, because nobody ever goes to prison for cheating on someone, but you do go to prison for domestic violence. And so we see this, that even if somebody does betray us, still, Jesus says, and it says in all our teachings, he who is free of sin, let him be the first to cast a stone. And so often the things we criticize people for, we're doing it ourselves. We either have done it, we are doing it, or we will do it from our offenses. Just like Sobari Muni, he was a celibate monk. He didn't commit, you could say he wasn't engaged in lust. He never was engaged in lust. He wasn't engaged in lust, but the Lord made him engage in lust. Why? From offenses of committing against Garuda. So that's another story, but sticking to the theme. So there's actually a similar story in the Bhagavatam that's similar to the Mary, Joseph, Jesus pastime, actually. And so this is from the 9th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 3. And the title of that chapter is The Marriage of Sukanya and Shavana Muni. The marriage of Sukanya and Shavana Muni. So once upon a time, there was a princess named Sukanya, and her father, the king, and his entire entourage were traveling the countryside one day. So while they were traveling the countryside, the princess Sukanya, she saw two shiny objects in the ground. So she was thinking, what are these two shiny objects? So she took the pin out of her hair and she pulled these shiny objects. And outside these, what emerged from these shiny objects was a red substance. And what was that red substance? Blood. And she was thinking, what's going on? There was a yogi named Shavana Muni meditating in the ground. His entire body was underground except his eyes. And that red substance was his blood. She poked his eyes out. And so it's described that from this offense against this yogi, this sage, is that the king and his servants became, the Bhagavatam is so weird. It says because of this offense committed by Sukanya, the king and his servants had to suffer for him. And what was the offense or the suffering? Constipation. So apparently, constipation comes from offenses against crazy personalities. So the king, he asks the sage, once the sage emerged from the ground, he asked Shavana Muni, what can me and my servants do to, and my daughter do to become free from this offense? So Shavana Muni, as I mentioned before, he's a yogi, a sage who does very difficult austerities, meaning he's not very good looking. His skin is very old, decrepit from performing so many austerities. So Shavana Muni says, in order to relieve yourself of this offense, I want to marry your beautiful daughter. And Sukanya, she never said, yuck, over my dead body, or rather over your dead body. You would never marry. She was actually she was clearly free from Jama, Aishraya, Shuta, Shribir, Edamana, Manupama, Navrahati, Abidatumvai, Twama, Kinchna, Gochna. She was completely free from her attachment to Jama, high birth, She's the princess, the daughter of a king. Not only that, Jama Aishwarya, she was obviously detached from material opulence. Shruta, high education, and especially Shri, beauty. She wasn't detached from beauty because she never criticized the sage like, ugh, you are disgusting and ugly. Like, look at me, I'm beautiful. I'm not going to marry some, ugly sage. No, she was humble enough. She married him without any complaints. And so in this way, the sage, this yogi, married Sukanya. So the king and his servants went away, relieved of their offense. So in this way, they lived together. But one day, Chavanamuni, he was thinking, although my wife is so humble, she's so detached, she's not criticizing me for my looks. Still, I want to become very young and good looking for her. And so he came in contact with some magicians known as the Ashvini Kumaras. I guess they were twins, I believe, if I'm correct. And so Chavanamuni, he says, my dear magicians, my dear Kumars, I have a heavenly drink known as Soma Ras. And if you can make me young by your mystic powers, then I will give you this heavenly drink known as Soma Ras. And so think of whatever pleasure. Soma Ras is whatever your guilty pleasure is, that's Soma Ras. We could equate that to whatever you enjoy the most in this world, that's your Soma Ras. And so, in other words, we could be tempted by so many things. So that's another lesson in itself. But anyways, the Ashvini Kumaras, they say, yes, sure, we will make you young if you give us Soma Ras. So the Ashvini Kumaras took Chavanamuni to a very beautiful, pure-looking, enchanted lake. So they dipped him inside this lake, and when they came out, he became very young, very handsome. Or as they say, or as women say, tall, dark, and handsome. So when Sukanya saw her husband, technical difficulty, when Sukanya saw her husband, she wasn't neither elated when he was young, nor disturbed when he was not so young, because she was obviously deeply connected to God. And that's what made her attractive, and not her physical beauty. So in the Gita, just like, why is a computer attractive? Because it's connected to its power source. When it's disconnected from its power source, it's unattractive. So Sukanya, she was so attractive. Why? Not because of her beauty, but because she was connected to Krishna, the all-attractive one. And what's the result of being connected to Krishna? Yasyasti bhakti bhagavatiya kinchana sarve gunais tatra samasate suraha. Good qualities make people attractive, right? Have you ever seen, just like, for example, many people kill each other over money, including women may kill their husbands over money. Have you ever seen a man say, I'm a millionaire. I'm a millionaire, and I just found out that my wife, she tried to kill me over my estate, but she's still good looking. I'm going to still stay with her. No, he's no longer attracted to her anymore. Why? Because she has no good qualities, like greed. And greed causes people. So in this way, Sukanya was very beautiful. And so long story short, getting back to the point, when the Ashvini Kumaras made Chavanamuni young and handsome, one day Sukanya's father came to their palace or ashram. I don't know how detached they were or attached from an external point of view. He came to their home. Her father came to their home unannounced. And so in this way, Sukanya was embracing her husband, Chavanamuni. So then when she saw her father come, she approached her father. She says, my dear father, I'm so happy to see you. But unfortunately, her father did not return the cordial greetings. He said, Sukanya, I raised you better than this. Who is this young man you're hugging? You're going to be all disgrace to our family. I taught you better than that. How can you cheat on your husband? So what does Sukanya say? She says, my dear father, that young man is Chavanamuni. He entered a magic lake, and now he's young. Do you buy that? And so her father said, oh, yeah, sure. So, because in the Vedic age, these mystic powers were very common. But obviously, if this happened in a modern age, nobody will buy that story. But the lesson is the same lesson we were discussing today, how we could get ourselves in a lot of trouble from jumping to conclusions. He jumped to conclusion. What was his conclusion? Because Sukanya was embracing a young man who he did not realize was her husband, who entered her majorate, he could have ruined his relationship with his daughter. And so why? Because he only saw one angle of vision. And we see, in sports, why does the athlete or the player, we see when the referee, sometimes the ref is wrong and sometimes the referee is right. But suppose the referee is right, but the player thinks the referee is wrong. What happens? The player screams at the ref. He's literally, like in baseball, they like kick dirt on the ref and they're like screaming in their face. And why is that? Because they have one angle of vision. So the same lesson. So there's many pastimes, but as we our time is gradually being devoured. There's many pastimes I thought to discuss from about jumping to conclude. Maybe I'll discuss one more and move to the second half of this verse we will be discussing today. Or maybe I'll use that to incorporate in questions and answers. So here's another pastime about jumping to conclusion. So long story short, once upon a time, there was a devotee in Lord Chaitanya's time, and his name was Duki Krishnadas. So Duki Krishnadas had a guru named Hridoy Chaitanya. And so Hridoy Chaitanya gave Duki Krishnadas this name when he gave him Diksha or initiation. And so one day, Srimati Radharani, she wanted to show mercy to Duki Krishnadas. So while Duki Krishnadas was given the service by his guru to sweep the road leading to Seva Kunj, a place in India known as Seva Kunj, and here we are in Chicago known as New Seva Kunj. So this is very kind of, you could say, pertinent of what we were discussing. So Duki Krishnadas was given the service to sweep the road and at Seva Kunj in India. And so Srimati Radharani wanted to show him some mercy. How so? One day she lost her ankle bracelet, a very enchanted, beautiful ankle bracelet. And this, I guess, came from the spiritual world, so forgive me for not knowing all the details specifically. So Duki Krishnadas, in the course of sweeping this new Seva Kunj road, he found this ankle bracelet. And so one day, an old woman who was actually one of the associates of Srimati Radharani, I believe her name was Lalita Saki, she disguised herself as an old woman. And she went up to Duki Krishnadas. She says, my dear Prabhu, my friend has lost her ankle bracelet. Have you found it? And so he says, I did find an ankle bracelet, but I would like to return it to the actual owner. So can you introduce me to the actual owner? So it's described that Lalita Saki, in this disguised form as an old woman, she transformed Duki Krishnadas into his original form in the spiritual world, which was, a manjari, one of the female servants. In a female, so now he's in a male body. In other words, to simplify, he's in a male body known as Duki Krishnadas. And Lalita, in order to meet Srimati Radharani, transformed her into his original form in the spiritual world, a female form known as a manjari, to meet Srimati Radharani. So in this way, to speed up the story, Srimati Radharani, she was so pleased that Duki Krishnadas, in the form of this manjari, returned her ankle bracelet. In order to show him gratitude, she not only took her ankle bracelet and made a special impression, put this ankle bracelet to his head, making a new type of tilak in the form of her ankle bracelet. Not only did she give him a new tilak impression, but she also gave him a new name, Shamananda. Shama is another name for Radharani. I'm not exactly sure what the meaning, but Ananda means pleasure. So Shamananda means one who brings Radharani pleasure. So because Duki Krishnadas brought Radharani so much pleasure, Radharani renamed him Shamananda. And so she revealed this. So long story short, when Duki Krishnadas returned to his male body, this tilak was still on his head. and he basically told everyone, don't call me Dukhi Krishnadas anymore. My name is Shamananda. And so Srimati Radharani also revealed this information to Dukhi Krishnadas's Shikha Guru, Jiva Goswami. And so there were only two persons that knew exactly what happened. Of course, Dukhi Krishnadas and Jiva Goswami. And they were forbidden to reveal this to anyone. Now, it's considered a great offense that if you get initiated by a guru and they give you a name, it's considered not only offense to change your name, but to start wearing some unknown tilak as if you want to start your own sampradaya. And like this happens a lot. Prabhupada calls them sahajiyas. They want to start their own, what is it called, opera sampradayas. So it appeared that Dukhi Krishnadas, he wanted to start his own sampradaya for fame. He wanted to develop his new tilak for fame. He changed the name, Prabhupada's institution, from the International Society of Krishna Consciousness to the International Society of Radharani Consciousness. And so in this way, Dukhi Krishnadas, he approached his guru. And his guru, the first thing he saw when he approached Dukhi Krishnadas, he was like, what kind of tilak? So he chastised his guru. He was like, Dukhi Krishnadas, what kind of tilak is that? I have never seen that before. That is not in any of our bona fide authorized sampradayas. Now, does anyone know what the 4 sampradayas, Vaishnava sampradayas are? Can anyone mention that as a trivial for some interactions? One of them. Somebody mentioned one of them, then other people. Sri Sampradaya. What's another one? Rudra? No, Prabhu, I said one. Somebody else. All right, Sri Rudra, he already said it. Huh? Kumar Sampradaya. There's one more. I can't remember it. What is it? Oh, it's the one we're in. Obviously, I don't deserve to be in it. It's called the Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya. And so in this way, it appeared that Dukhi Krishnadas developed his own tilak, started his own sampradaya, and changed the name of Prabhupada's institution to Radharani Consciousness. He was like, are you kidding me? And so when Hriday Chaitanya chastised Dukhi Krishnadas for having a new tilak, Dukhi Krishnadas, he says, my dear Guru Maharaj, my name isn't Dukhi Krishnadas. Call me Shamananda. What? So as you can imagine, his guru really became livid. That not only did you change your tilak, but you also changed the very name that he gave him. So the guru, he rejected Dukhi Krishna. He's like, I reject you. You are obviously deviating from the principles of Krishna consciousness. So in this way, the guru went a separate way. Dukhi Krishnadas went a separate way, but in very low spirits. He was thinking, if I don't maintain or keep the mercy of my guru, how will I advance in spiritual consciousness? So in this way, he was crying and crying. So one day he went to his Guru Maharaj. He was like, Guru Maharaj, please forgive me. Please accept me back. So the Guru says, Hriday Chaitanya, my dear Dukhi Krishnadas, or Shamananda, there's only one condition I will accept you back. You have to get rid of this tilak. So in this way, Dukhi Krishnadas, or Shamananda, he agreed to erase the tilak from his forehead. So when he erased the tilak from his forehead, it was gone. But then, gradually, it emerged again. In this way, he wiped his tilak off again. It emerged again. Not only will his tilak emerge again, but it will emerge even more brightly and brilliantly than the last time before he wrote it down. So it's getting brighter and brighter and brighter. And so there's a saying, we are told to let our light shine. And if it does, we won't need to tell anybody it does. Lighthouses don't fire cannons to call attention to their shining. They just shine. So in this way, Shamananda Prabhu, or Dukhi Krishnadas, he just kept on shining and shining and shining. And in this way, his guru can understand, wow, my disciple has obviously obtained the mercy of Srimati Radharani. So this is obviously the influence of Krishna's Yoga Maya. Yoga Maya. And so you can understand that maybe we don't get ourselves in trouble when we're influenced by Krishna's Yoga Maya, meaning that by Krishna's Yoga Maya, his spiritual illusory potency, he covers devotees to teach us a certain lesson. Meaning, it's not that the guru of Shamananda, Hridoy Chaitanya, was committing offenses from jumping to conclusion. No, this is a pastime orchestrated by the Lord, to teach us certain principles and to also show mercy, to glorify his devotees, many things. But often, of course, as devotees, as conditioned souls, and even in material world, for those who are not, of course, when we come to devotional service, there's a different standard. In one sense, we are covered by Yoga Maya to a certain degree, but we should never feel that way. We should always feel, I'm covered by Mahamaya, the material illusory potency, meaning I could get myself in a lot of trouble. I'm committing so many offenses. I'm jumping to conclusions. So this is a lesson we could take in this pastime of that we should be very serious or very cautious of criticizing devotees, because that's the first offense against the holy name, to commit Vaishnava, those who are preaching the glories of the Lord. And as far as Kishori is concerned, I've been fortunate enough to hear either directly or indirectly, the mercy that Kishori has shown on devotees in our own community. Just off the top of my head, I'm thinking of a couple devotees. When Gokulananda Prabhu was in South America, he had no idea who Kishori was. So he was somehow or other got into contact with Krishna consciousness in South America. So people gave him books. They also gave him a picture of some deities. So the first temple he went to was in New York when he came to America, because there was no brahmachari ashram in where he was living at the time. There may or may be now, I'm not sure. So he decided, I need to live in an ashram, let me go to New York. But he stayed in New York maybe less than a year, I believe. Then finally he came to ISKCON Chicago, Kishori Temple. When he came to Kishori Temple, he was surprised that the first deities picture somebody gave him in South America, who he had no idea who they were, was Kishori. And that explains why probably ISKCON Chicago has a special place in Gokulananda Prabhu's heart. And so the lesson is, there's many lessons, but off the top of my head, there's like, what's his name? Gormani Prabhu, who gave Sunday feast, the last Sunday feast lecture, I believe. Yeah, he was explaining that, one day he rarely does altar service, but many years ago he did altar service. And he was sharing briefly, maybe he kept it in, but these are some nice stories to increase our faith also in our Christian consciousness. He was saying he was doing altar service and Kishori winked at him. And these are nice stories to increase our faith that the Lord is not just stone. He's not a deity. The deity form is very alive for us. And there's one last story that I wasn't supposed to hear. You could argue maybe Krishna blessed me to hear, that there's one devotee, I'm not going to mention their name, but one day they were telling their friend, I was happening to standing nearby, a couple of devotees were standing nearby, but they were talking to each other, so they didn't hear what I heard. So one day this devotee they told their friend. I was just on my phone nearby and I heard it. And they said the most amazing thing happened. When I was taking darshan by myself, they saw Kishori move, like in a kind of small dancing way. And I was thinking, yeah, why not? And so, Dharma projito kaitavo atra paramo nirmatsaranam satam. Usually, our main disease in this material world is envy. So sometimes we criticize devotees. Oh, I've been chanting for many years. I've been coming for many years. I know many shlokas. How can that happen to you? It didn't happen to me. But what's the lesson we learn? Bahu Jamakari Adi Shravanam Kirtan Tabutana Paya Krishna Pade Primadan. Yes, you could be chanting for many years, this verse says, but you could be doing the wrong type of chanting for many years. And what's the wrong type of chanting? You're not chanting in humility. So it's just like you do Uh, just like in martial arts, you could say anything. You may be doing something, just like, or I'll use my mridanga technique. Some people sometimes I don't know all the mridanga techniques, so sometimes I teach them the wrong techniques. And so sometimes people may criticize them. Oh, you're doing the wrong technique. What do you mean? I've been doing this for many years, but you actually been doing it wrong. So sometimes, so that's possible. We could do so many things for so many years, but we could do it the wrong way. So we should always, whatever connects somebody and makes anybody enthusiastic about Christian consciousness is true. You may call it false or not, out of pride, out of envy, or out of judgment, but whatever connects us to Krishna or Kishore even more is true. And even if something is true in this world, but if it disconnects us from Krishna, then it's not true. So what's the use of living a life of so-called truth if it disconnects us from Krishna? But even if whatever devotees are experiencing is not the truth, but if it connects them and makes them have a deeper relationship with Kishore, then that's the absolute truth. So this is the final lesson we could, like I said, we should be very careful how we judge devotees, and not only, our you could say the leaders in our movement, the swamis and stuff, but every devotee. Achayam eva hadaye pujam yashadaye hate nata badeshu chanyeshu sa bhakta prakita shrimtaha. It says, for one who worships Kishore, but does not show proper respect to devotees in general, or even people in general, then that person is considered the lowest kind of devotee who commits offenses and will get themselves in a lot of trouble from jumping to conclusions. So there's many things I wanted to share today, but we at least have a little more than 15 minutes, so maybe whatever I was going to also discuss about today, maybe I'll incorporate it into the discussion. So anyway, thank you. Hare Krishna. Let's see.
Jaya Baladeva Prabhu. It's a very nice class, and the message is very, very important. In one sense, the fact that the verse says it very nicely, it's very beautifully composed. So Uddhava is, saying this, and the fact that externally appears that this simple woman who, externally appears to be doing something wrong, going out the boundaries, as you said, social boundaries. They have obtained this most supreme, position in terms of devotion. And then the other part, he says that, it's true that Krishna will give his favor, will give his blessings to even ignorant people.
Very nice point.
And so even a simple person, a simple vanachari, simple women who, are wandering in the forest, simple people, so-called, and then, but Krishna will give them their blessings, and their blessings will act in, it will do the magic, So the message that you mentioned, that you focus in your class, is a very important message, because we have to pass the external, sort of looking at devotees externally, in whatever way the devotees are, and being able to see the devotion. We're able to see the heart of the devotee who is actually sincerely worshiping Krishna. So we tend to get so covered by these external things and jump to the conclusions, and commit, minimize devotees, or discourage devotees, or neglect devotees, or even, as you say, offend devotees, and that type of thing. So that is a very important principle that we have to embrace. So thank you very much for bringing that up.
Jaya, thank you for highlighting that point from the verse today. So yeah, exactly, you're absolutely right. That's a very good point. So yeah, the very verse mentions it. So anything else? Oh, well, I'll mention something in regards to your point. So yeah, Like you say, even this verse says, even an ignorant worshiper, simple women, or anybody simple, the Lord could give his mercy to anybody. And so we see that basically generally speaking, our conception of elevated high devotee is one who could, I was joking with one Mataji who's taking the Bhakti Sastri, and she took the Bhakti Sastri, with the, hope that she'll eventually get second initiation because she wants to serve, since she's in Chicago, she wants to serve Kishori, on deities. So, but she was taking the Bhakti Sastri, and she's like, Krishna did not bless me with a good memory. I cannot remember these shlokas. And not only that, people have their everyday, day-to-day prop bills. They have to deal with their family. So many things. How am I supposed to remember this whole? And if that's the criteria, then she lied. I guess I'm never getting a second initiation unless my Guru Maharaj just gives his kripa, which is also possible too. And so then she pulled out a Bhakti Sastri. And so generally speaking, in other words, our preconceived notion of, generally speaking, of elevated devotee is somebody who can memorize well and who can recite a lot of shlokas. And that's nice, and we should study them. It's not like we should use it as an excuse not to study, but still, it doesn't matter how much some people study, they just cannot memorize. And because that's a God-given ability, like singing. It doesn't matter how many singing lessons you take. Somebody still sounds like a donkey, It doesn't matter. Why? Because it's a God-given ability. Same with memorizing. So that's not the ultimate criteria of your bhakti, how much you can memorize and how much you can recite. The criteria is how much love you have. So we see in the scriptures there are two types of personalities. Those who love to learn and those who learn to love. Let me repeat that. Two types of personalities. Those who love to learn and those who learn to love. So our main concern is how we can love. And so Buddha says a nice quote in this regard. He says, the thoughtless man, even if he can recite a large portion of the law, but is not a doer of it, has no share in the priesthood, but is like a cowherd counting the cows of others. The follower of the law, even if he can recite only a small portion of the law, but having forsaken passion and hatred and foolishness, possesses true knowledge and serenity of mind, he, caring for nothing in this world, has indeed a share in the priesthood. Gita dita chaye napi bhati bhavena chetasa veda sasha padanani tenatitani savashaha. This is also a lesson Lord Chaitanya taught us in regards to that illiterate Brahmana versus the proud scholars. He told the illiterate Brahmana, you are an authority on the Gita because you learn to love. The proud scholars, they are not authorities on the Gita because they only love to learn. And so in this way, we're speaking about, we may know shlokas about forgiveness, but that does not mean we could forgive. We see it happens all the time. You could speak so many shlokas about forgiveness, tolerance, mercy, and compassion. Then when Krishna gives us the test, so we should ask ourselves, why isn't Krishna giving us the mercy to respond with integrity when we're provoked? It's probably because we love to learn and we don't learn to love. That's probably the reason. So we see, anybody could know so many shlokas when people are glorifying him. Prabhuji, I need your mercy. Everything you do is so wonderful. But try remembering shlokas when you're insulted, when you're ignored, when you're criticized. Try remembering that. Usually, the only thing we remember when we're criticized or insulted is curse words. That's how powerful the modes of material nature are. Really? You spoke so beautifully. What happened to all those shlokas? Only curse words are coming out. And so we see that Krishna will put you in a test. And so that's why it's always good to be humble. I do not know anything. So anyway, maybe we could take another discussion and question. I would like to sneak in. I still have time to sneak in one last point. Hopefully, I'll try to answer in the next question. Anything else? Mother Krishna Shamansi? Okay. That's all we ask.
You were highlighting just from that point of the gopis being supposedly judged for impropriety, the main focus in your class had been the sort of a limited view that persons may hold, and based on their limited view, then reaching some conclusion, and obviously pointing out and illustrating how clearly holding just a narrow view wouldn't be the full picture of a situation. So I was just dwelling on that point and thinking that there seems to be greater responsibility on persons holding a certain position that necessitates having that broader view, because otherwise there can be quite a bit of devastation that can be caused if one is imposing merely a narrow view on a situation according to one's position that necessitates having a broader view. So I was just relating it also to the position the person holds, that it's an important factor in broadening the view.
Very beautiful point. And it reminds me, I've quoted this many times before, but I don't have the reference right now. I could look it up, but that'll take too long. But there's a verse in regards to the Prithu Maharaj pastime. So Prithu Maharaj is a king in an official leadership position, and he's meant to judge others. So when we're in a leadership positions, yes, that's our duty to, manage and judge. But this verse describes how we should manage and how we should judge. So this verse in the Prithu Maharaj, it says Prithu Maharaj was so neutral that if the son of his enemy wasn't punishable, he would not punish him. If his own son was punishable, he would punish him. This is how neutral he was. So this is contrasting to the general mentality in this material world, that your friends and family, they can do no wrong. Your enemies, they can do no right. And this is the type of management leaderships that the Bhagavatam discourages, and how we could get ourselves on a lot. So the whole point is that if we're not willing to point out the faults of our friends and family, then don't be so eager to point out the faults or so-called faults of your enemies and foes. And so, or vice versa. If you point out the faults of your friends and family, then yes, go ahead, you're neutral. You point out everyone's faults. But if you want to have double standards, then this is how we could get ourselves in a lot of trouble. And so this is the type of leader the Bhagavatam describes we should be, which is very different. That's why I'm not neutral. That's why Prahlad Maharaj, that's our Priya Brata Maharaj, they're like, I'm not taking no position. And not only friends and family, you have an old man and a beautiful woman, and you're responsible for distributing the money equally. What's going to happen? You're going to take the beautiful woman on a date, use all the budget. We see that's what politicians do, right? They're not neutral. So the senses, the mind, they make us commit all types of offenses. And so the conclusion is, I'll briefly, since we have 5 minutes left, I'll kind of segue into this. Unfortunately, I don't have time to go elaborately, but the second half of today's verse gives a very beautiful analogy. It says, it is true that the Supreme Lord himself awards his blessings even to an ignorant worshiper, just as the best medicine works even when taken by a person ignorant of its ingredients. And so there's the exact same verse in the 6th canto, chapter 2, verse 19 of the Bhagavatam. It says, Yatagadam viryatamam upayutam yadrichaya ajanato api atmagunam kurnyam mantro api udaritaha agadam. Medicine. It says the exact same thing as this verse. It says, even if a person is forced to takes medicine or is forced to take it, its potency does not depend on the person's knowledge or understanding of the medicine. A child not even an adult understands what are all these ingredients on this medicine. You don't know all the chemical properties, but you take it anyway because its potency does not depend on it. In much the same way, why do we do Harinam Sankirtan? And why do we chant the holy name? Because people are still getting benefited by hearing the holy name, right? They're still getting benefits. So that's why we do Harinam Sankirtan. It doesn't depend on their understanding. However, still, there's a nice quote that's attributed to the Mahabharata. It says, quote, "One should destroy mental grief by wisdom, as physical grief is destroyed by medicine. Wisdom has this power. They, however, that are foolish can never acquire equanimity of mind." So why is it that if we keep taking the medicine of the holy name, why are we still disturbed by mental grief? No, it's finding so many faults, getting to long arguments with devotees. Well, it's not only just like a medicine. It's not only which you take, it's when you take it and why you take it. So when we chant the holy name, it's not only what we chant, when we chant it, but why we chant it. So what do we chant? We chant Hare Krishna. We don't chant the names of this world because it's like poison. So the medicine is the holy name. And when do we chant it? Kirtaniya Sadahari, all the time. So if we're not chanting it all the time, then we could understand, yes, I'm going to be disturbed. I'm going to have some disturbances. And why do we chant it is the main thing. If you're chanting the holy name for fame, just like Haridasa Kaur or Durasamoni, when you engage in devotional service, yes, people may appreciate you, glorify you. Probably you are so wonderful, you are so amazing. But still, we have no control over fame. Sometimes people say, "Oh, wow, you are so wonderful, but actually I met somebody else, I'm going to take their advice." And that's an indication of why you chanting it. If you become disturbed by it, that means you still have a disease known as envy within your heart. And therefore, your happiness from the holy name actually didn't come from the holy name. It came from respect, from honor. So we could indicate why is Srila Prabhupada so amazing. It's because for 45 years, he tried to spread the holy name from when he was 25 to 70 without experiencing hardly any results. So what does that mean? His happiness didn't come from fame, from honor. It actually came from the holy name and trying to serve his guru. So there's a saying, people are rewarded in public for what they practice for years in private. Srila Prabhupada, he practiced the holy name and giving it to others for many years without experiencing any results. And consequently, he became, the Lord gave him some external mercy. The Lord always gave him some mercy. So that's a lesson we could take from the holy name. If we're chanting the holy name and we're not feeling the ecstasy, then we should chant. What's the check and balance? Why are we doing it? Why are we chanting it? And so I'll end with this. So it's described that there are three, just like in performing arts, there's beginning, intermediate, and advanced stages. So it's described that you could chant the holy name in the beginning stage known as Nam Aparat, the intermediate stage known as Nama Bas, and the advanced stage known as Shuddhanam. So what is Nama Aparat means? It means I know everything. What does Nama Bas means? I know some things. And what does Shuddhanam means? I do not know anything. And this is precisely why we're known as Rupa Nugas. Sri Rupa Goswami says in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Antya Lila, chapter 1, verse 2 through 11, he says, quote, I do not know anything. The only transcendental words I can utter are those which Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu makes me speak. So this is therefore why we're known as Rupa Nugas. We see devotees like that are chanting Shuddhana. Why? Because they realize I do not know anything. So that should be our lesson. Don't jump to conclusions unless people give us permission to criticize us. If people give us permission to criticize us, to chastise us, then that's safe. But if they don't, then we might be sorry. So that's our lesson we could take today. Thank you, everyone. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai.